It is a Sunday fun day here at St. Vincent College. Welcome to Training Camp Live presented by FedEx. Fans making their way for the Steelers' last practice before their first off day of the 2023 training camp. Hi, everybody. I'm Missi Matthews, joined by Max Starks, and it's also the last one without pads. We know what a big day Tuesday will be. So take us through what the guys are probably feeling, knowing tomorrow there's a little bit of a reprieve.
It's the last part of the strain, so to speak, of going through and kind of measuring your power. I mean, the pads will really dictate a lot for more so the offensive line and defensive line. You'll see a rapid increase in the physicality that will be demonstrated between the lines that really establish true run lanes, as opposed to the two-hand touch. I would have tackled him. You'll not find out, can you really tackle him, and did you really get there or not? So I think this is the last time to kind of clean up a lot of the technical aspects of running the offense, understanding your calls and plays, what are you looking at, and some of the route running. This is the last shot you get as the dress rehearsal before things really heat up on Tuesday. And I have to say, I cannot wait. I mean, I know the acclimation period is good for players. It's in the CBA. But this is now the moment where a lot of guys have to take that breath and say, okay, who am I? Once these pads come on, the truth will be told. It no longer is it the air drill and kind of I can show myself and look good on film and look like I'm thriving in this environment. Tuesday will be that culminator. A lot of guys, I think, will start to show up, and you'll start to also see some guys shrink as the Steelers start to make a real decision, start moving forward with how this 53-man roster gets down from 90. It's going to be a big moment, and I'm excited. I know today is today. We're going to take it one day at a time. But today is a very technical aspect day. You want to make sure you're putting good film out there, showing that you know what to do, and then we'll see how they do it come Tuesday.
And as you know, Mike Tomlin, he's probably preaching that to his guys today. Today still counts. You can't just say, well, it's the last day, tomorrow's an off day, then the pads go on and real football starts. This isn't real football. It's football-like, as he likes to remind everybody, and not to read too much into it, but it is still part of the process. There are still guys who are kind of making a name for themselves, but as you said, we'll know more on Tuesday. There is a roster move that we're going to get to right now, though. The Steelers announced today that they signed inside linebacker Kwon Alexander, and to make room on the roster, they released offensive tackle Jared Williams. So this is a one-year contract, turns 29 next week, ninth season in the NFL he's heading into, and the Steelers just saw him last season when he was with the Jets.
And Kwon Alexander is a great find at this point in the year because he brings physicality, he brings speed, and he also brings experience. I mean, he has almost 600 tackles in his career thus far. So a guy that knows what to do and knows how to do it at a very high level, also having a Pro Bowl nod. And I think one of the things that we look at when you're talking about that inside linebacker position, because that's what he's brought in to kind of bolster, you're used to having three guys there. You know, you'll have your two starters in the middle, and then you'll have that swing third guy. And I don't think the Steelers are necessarily excited about where they're at with the second-year guy in Mark Robinson, and then also rookie Tanner Muse coming in and, you know, still trying to feel their way out, but the second-team unit doesn't have the same pop as the first-team unit, which has Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts, two other veterans that were brought here in the offseason from other teams. So I think rounding that out to give us a little bit more competition there as guys start to get a little bit more physical. You need that body and that experience, and you want to see how things go to make sure that you're not cutting out the second-string plays because the young guys don't know.
We're going to talk a lot more about that position group coming up a little bit later in the show, but every time GM Omar Khan speaks, Max, he always says we're always looking to get better. If there's a move to make, we're going to make it. And talk about completely revamping this inside linebackers room. It's not just the players, but the coach as well, with Aaron Curry coming on staff. So we will get to that, but let's recap what happened at practice yesterday, specifically the injuries. Here's head coach Mike Tomlin after yesterday's practice.
DeMarvin Leal was taken off the field, evaluated. He had a little difficulty breathing. We don't think it's significant. KZ had an ankle injury of some description. He's being evaluated as well, maybe a day or two. Alfonso Graham appeared to have a shoulder injury when he fell and hit the ground, and he's also being evaluated.
All right, we did hear from DeMonte KZ during the lunch media period today. He said he's kind of more week to week, so we'll get an official update from Coach Tomlin following practice today. But it felt like the beginning of camp, there was nobody on this list, and as it continues, we're starting to see some guys creep on here. Hopefully nothing too serious, and when we can go down to the field, we'll keep an eye out to see if any of those guys are able to do anything today at practice.
Attrition is real, no matter if you have pads on or no pads on. Alfonso Graham yesterday, it rained really hard yesterday during practice, and during a drill, Alfonso Graham was making a cut coming on the inside and kind of lost his footing on the juke move and slid directly on his shoulder. We saw it live, and, it was one of those things where you're just like, ooh. You hold your breath for a second seeing guys go down in that fashion because once the weather conditions change, it's a whole new ball game. And so we wish the best for him. And like you said, with DeMarvin Leal and company, hopefully we're able to measure that. I mean, we know what DeMonte KZ brings. We saw this time last year in camp how he was just really a force going head-to-head with Calvin Austin in a lot of plays, making a name for himself. Then, of course, when he was healthy and came back to the team and the instant impact he made, he seemed to be a ball hawk. So I don't think there's a worry there, and I think that's why you see the week-to-week status on him. But, yeah, I mean, that's what this game is. Who can stay healthier more consistently? And we see DeMarvin Leal right there trotting around. You can't tell if he's going to practice or not because of the simple fact that they don't have pads on. So you can't tell. I mean, he's sitting there in drills, and he's doing stuff, so you wonder if he'll just be limited today in practice.
Right. Coach Tomlin said it did not appear to be significant, but that was good to see. And just prior to showing you DeMarvin Leal down here on the practice fields at St. Vincent College, we saw number 6 on defense. That is Kwon Alexander. So 2 26s right now there. We have him right there. Anthony McFarland, of course, for offense. So Kwon got in last night, signed the contract, thrown in there today. And what do you expect to be able to maybe see from him, if anything, today?
Well, I think maybe in some 7-on-7 stuff, you throw him in and just kind of tell him, hey, this is your drop zone. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's been in the league 8 years. So, I mean, if he hears cover 3, I think he knows what his responsibility is. Cover 2, you got, one man. I mean, he'll know what the coverages are. He'll know most of the base schematics of the defense. But as far as the nuances, blitzing and all those kind of things, I think that'll probably be a little bit that he has to catch up on. Hopefully he got it in the book. And, like you said, Aaron Curry probably sat with him after morning meetings and just kind of went over some basic things because, I mean, it's scripted at this point. So you know what the defensive call is. If you're putting him in, you can look at it and say, hey, on this is what you're going to be looking at and expecting. This is what you're going to be looking at for his 4 plays per period he might get. I would expect him maybe even 2 plays per period just to get him acclimated into A, training camp condition, and then B, a part of this new team.
And he's somebody the Steelers looked at. I believe in May he came in for a free agent visit just to check him out and whatnot. So it makes sense. Somebody you did your homework on. I'm sure they followed his career. A guy from LSU, a 4th-round draft pick in 2015. Going back down to the field, we did see a shot of T.J. Watt, who appears not to be practicing today. But as Coach Tomlin said from the onset, guys like T.J., Minka is dealing with a personal reason. They're going to get some time off to see what these young guys can do. And Nick Herbig is probably one of those guys that can take advantage.
Absolutely. Nick Herbig's been doing a tremendous job in camp these first couple of days, and he has that nice little wiggle. I mean, there's a reason why the Steelers like to go to the Wisconsin pond and draw from it. Nick Herbig, an outside backer type, a guy who was already talking to T.J. Watt even before he got drafted here, has had a relationship with him. So you have to imagine he's going to probably get first crack at that. He's been working at the left outside linebacker over the right side of the offensive line most of practice. So he's the natural ascension to move from 2 to 1 as T.J. gets a vet day, which are
100%,
which are some of the best days ever. To actually watch other guys sweat when you don't have to is always a fun thing, and know that, hey, there's nothing there. I'm just my age and my performance is dictated that I will get a day off because, trust me, come Tuesday, T.J. Watt's going to be ready to fire off on all cylinders and offensive tackles. I need Chuks Okorafor and company, Spencer Anderson, LaRaven Clark. I need you to be on your P's and Q's because it's going to get real once the pads get on against number 90 when he is ready to go.
As Coach says, it's usually better to say whoa than sick 'em.
Yes.
And I'm sure, as you said, number 90 will be looking to get those pads on Tuesday. Nick Herbig, when he spoke to the media yesterday, was talking about TJ Watt's duck under move, and that's something he's watched him do. TJ has helped him in terms of doing it in person and also watching film. And I just love, he is a rookie. Coach Tomlin was asked if Nick Herbig had a little bit of a, jump start to this beginning part of training camp, and he said, I have not. Because he does not give credit to rookies yet,
No.
Especially not in this portion of camp.
No, a compliment from Coach Tomlin in shells or in shirts or in the underwear Olympics, as I like to call it, will never happen, because a true test of measure and skill comes when you actually are donned in full armor. I mean, show me how you do in real combat situations. Don't show me. I don't want to give you scores off of a simulator, and that's what this is. We're in the simulator right now. It'll get real on Tuesday.
All right, since we're taking a look down here at the defensive line, linebackers, let's talk a little bit more about the inside linebackers. I had a chance today to catch up with defensive coordinator Terrell Austin about the newest Steeler, Kwon Alexander.
He's going to bring, obviously, a guy who's played a lot of really good football, veteran skills, a guy who's played in some games and some meaningful games. And so I think he upgrades the floor of our linebacker room, which we now have. I think, we've got 4 veteran dudes and a young Mark Robb. I think that's great for Mark Robb's growth, and I think it's great for our room.
What have you seen from that group so far, being that they're not in pads yet?
Exactly. It's hard to tell, but what I see is I think so far I think they're doing a good job communicating, making sure they're in the right spots as best you can right now without pads, and they're doing all the right things. And so it'll really come to fruition when we start putting on the pads and seeing how those things all tie together.
I know we've talked about this group a little bit already, Max, but what have you seen from them specifically as you're watching them during this acclimation period?
Well, one of the things I've seen is just diagnosing and reacting to plays. That's been the biggest thing. When you see a Cole Holcomb, when you see a Landon Roberts in there, guys who are captains, guys who have been starters on their respective teams coming here, I hear a lot of chatter and communication, which is always key early on in camp to make sure that there's not a shadow of a doubt of, what are we doing here on this specific play? There's no room for artistic creativity or interpretation like art. It's concrete like math. Like, listen, I am coming in the A-gap. Don't go in the A-gap, or he'll go and he'll tap a guy on the hip, one of the down linemen, to let him know, hey, I'm going here, so you go the opposite direction. That's what you can really get out of this type of period. Communication, understanding the speed, reacting in an appropriate manner to the plays that are given and how they unfold, and, of course, pursuit, right? The conditioning aspect of it. Are you going to go chase a guy 20 yards downfield even though you double-tapped him, but stay with the play just in case you miss it?
I think also, Mika Fitzpatrick talked about it during OTAs and minicamp. The communication thing is what you can work on during that offseason program here at camp, so that does continue. Landon Roberts and Cole Holcomb are both roommates. They said, obviously, they're spending a lot of time together, but it is helping because, as we have gone over, this room has just been turned upside down. Yeah,
this room has been cleared out, has been remodeled, has been repainted, and repurposed. Everything you think of, all the home renovation jokes you can make, that's exactly what this inside linebacker room is. Of course, you're looking at a holdover in Mark Robinson, drafted just a year ago, and really getting into, kind of his third year at the inside linebacker position, because this guy spent a lot of time at Ole Miss as a running back and then converted over his senior year to the linebacker position. He was a guy that was drafted late based off of what the ceiling potentially could be for him. So for him, getting another veteran in the room that he can kind of pick his brain, he can learn from, and kind of grow as a guy in that position to eventually be a leader on it, I think can only help the young guys. But also getting a vet in, it helps the rest of the defense. I mean, when you look at just kind of a lot of the changes that were made defensively and the additions that were brought in, right down the center line, right? I mean, when you think about it, Fehoko on the defensive line, a veteran coming in the nose tackle position. We aforementioned the inside linebackers that we brought in. And, of course, Marcus Golden on the edge as another linebacker on the outside. But in the middle, bringing in a Patrick Peterson, bringing in a Keanu O'Neal, and a Duke Dawson, like those type of guys that are newer to this organization are really important. And that's the communication central core. The center of your team is usually at those positions, the guys that need to know and the guys that are responsible for disseminating information to the outside halves of the team.
When you talk about Mark Robinson, I instantly think of the Baltimore Ravens game where he had a chance to go in. He just had that mentality. What can that do for a young guy as he continues to try to get better right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that you have an experience, like you have a reference point, because until you get into a regular season game, not a preseason game, but a regular season game, you don't really have a touchstone on, okay, here was my play in a real-time situation, doing real-time things to help my team win. And when you have those, it gives you more confidence when you come out here to camp. Because it's like, you know what, I've been there, I've done some of that. I'm not going to say done that. You done some of that with a little bit of playing time and getting to dress on game day, but it helps a lot in the growth of the player and putting him in situations or packages where he can kind of just allow his athleticism to flourish. But now he needs to take that next step and figure out, how do I do it? I know I can do it, but how do I go about doing it is always good.
Did you guys always take photos like that?
No, we always flexed. I
right?
don't know what you're talking about. That's just standard operating procedure because, I mean, offensive line, we're always in the pinnacle of shape. You know, our jerseys don't fit because we're so swole. No, we never took pictures like that. Now, that's purely the aesthetics of the defensive prowess of those players. Nothing against it, but at the end of the day, I mean, do muscles really matter if they don't function? And that group, most of them do function at a high level, but as offensive lineman, I'm like, if you show me some muscles, I'll show you a place where I want to hit you. So,
and one of those guys was Alex Highsmith. Of course, he got the new contract extension, and it does look like that work he did with Cam Hayward in the offseason to change his body to get ready for the season is paying off. Again, not in pads, but you just see that the physical part of him is very noticeable.
Yeah, the physical makeup is definitely noticeable, like you said. 14.5 sacks and a new contract always brings the best out of you, doesn't it? And I think for Alex Highsmith, well-earned, well-deserved. And, you know, now it's going to be, what do I do to understand that I've earned this contract, to show people? Because we're always in the show me now league. What have you done for me lately type of aspect. They're like, yeah, that was good last year. That got you the contract, but what's going to keep this contract? And I think Alex Highsmith knows that. He has a great perspective about it. Wolf and I were walking today from lunch, and we saw Alex. We congratulated him on the new contract. He said there's still plenty of work to do. So I can see that he has a focus about him, that it's going to be a lot of work for him, because you have to live up to that. Now people know who you are. You have a target on your back, and how do you answer that bell?
All right, well, on Tuesday when the pads go on, Alex Highsmith and company will be making life not so fun for some offensive tackles, and that's one of the maybe position battles, camp battles everybody wants to talk about and see. Where do you see that standing, and how much will change next week when the pads go on?
Everything will change for the offensive line perspective and for the defensive line, because now all the things that we thought about you, the impressions that you've left with us right now with no pads on, do you either A, answer the bell and continue to prove that it doesn't matter what type of equipment I have on, I'm still that same guy, or is it Tarzan, kind of trying to shrinks away, and now you're grasping for straws, or is it, no, now I can really show you, and I'm better than what I was without pads? So there's three ways it can go. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be very astutely watching. As you see that young man right there on the screen, Broderick Jones, will really get his chance to really start competing for that left tackle position in earnest once the pads come on, because we'll now have one-on-one pass rush. We'll now have team at a physical level, and we'll get more live shot drills like in 7 shots every day, when you get your chance to really prove, hey, am I really as nasty as they say I am? Or was it one of those things that was commercially produced? So I'm looking forward to that. Dan Moore, he has a brand new body. We talking about Alex Highsmith. Dan Moore came in very lean, trim, strong, muscular. So for him to really show off his power, it's going to be a great battle at that left tackle position for both of those guys.
Well, just like, Alex Highsmith, the motivation of a new contract when the team drafts somebody at your position in the first round, that's motivation as well. But what have you seen from Dan Moore as he's gone through these years of being a Pittsburgh Steeler?
It's just been growth, year-on-year growth. The first year, let's just face it, I was a third-round pick, and Dan was a third-round pick. You don't expect to start right out the gates, week 1, game 1, as a left tackle in this league. It usually takes a process. I had to sit, and I was a swing tackle my rookie year. Heck, I remember one of my good buddies, DJ Humphreys, starting left tackle for the Arizona Cardinals. He sat the whole year, and he was a first-rounder before he got his shot. So for Dan Moore to get thrust into the starting position, Zach Banner goes down. Chuksa Okorafor, who was supposed to be going to left, and Zach was going to be right, now slides over to the right side, and it's literally trial by fire. It's just like getting thrown in front of the camera and you don't have a cue card, right? And you're just like, what am I supposed to do? And he grew. He took his bumps and bruises. Then year 2, he also made another jump. I saw consistency in his stance, whereas in year 1, it was all over the place. He was just trying to figure out how to keep his confidence from series to series. And now you see that confidence. And I think now in year 3, he knows and has a better sense of self. He doesn't get too down on himself. He's not too high on himself when he does good stuff. He's just moving right along and just focusing on his craft, which I love. I watched some individual of them yesterday going through drills, and you can see him being very methodical, very conscious about what he was doing. Now, I don't think that competition that we kind of put that pressure out there in the universe as a media members, but I don't think it's affecting him at all. Now we'll see on Tuesday and once it actually gets real, but I think he's acquitting himself well. I think he's prepared for what this is going to be, not only media-wise, but physically, because there is an expectation when you draft a guy in the first round, he's supposed to be a contributor more sooner than rather later.
Talk to me about the interior line. There you see Nate Herbig, who was brought in during free agency, and the depth that they have there and how things could shake out in terms of the swing guy.
Well, I think the swing guy, yeah, that's what you're looking at, because right now you have Isaac Suamalu sitting at left guard. You have Mason Cole at center position and James Daniels. We know, for all intents and purposes, outside of injuries, that's what your holy trinity of the middle is going to be. Now behind that, you're looking at a William Dunkel. You're looking at a Nate Herbig, who was brought in also this offseason from Philadelphia, has experience, has started in this league, and can also snap as well. But Kendrick Green, another guy. What are you going to do, Kendrick? Healthy scratch a year ago. Are you going to try and regain your position on this team as a guy who could be dependable and ready to go at the center position? So I really expect this battle in the middle to be between Herbig, Kendrick Green, and William Dunkel to see who's going to be that swing interior guy for this team. But right now, Nate Herbig has looked good. I mean, he understands the system. He has a good skill set and, like you said, versatility in the middle. But I think it's between all three of those guys on that second unit, they're fighting like dogs. And really, the pads are really going to show and start separating guys. Who is the nastier of the guys that go take the bone from the other dog? That's what's going to be happening. 3 dogs, 1 bone.
That could be the next Mike Tomlin shirt if he starts using that phrase.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to hear it soon. I mean, when you get the bubble guys, it's going to be like, listen, we got 51 and 2 dogs. I'm sorry, 6 dogs, 2 bones.
There you
Who's
go.
going to win? And you're going to see them start to challenging guys, especially once the pads come on, because now you're getting it outright in earnest. Backs on backers period on Tuesday is going to be a hotly contested contest. I can't wait to see that. That's the little guy's version of one-on-one pass rush.
What do you think is going to be the big matchup that Coach Tomlin cooks up for that drill on Tuesday?
Oh, I think it's going to be Najee versus Cole Holcomb and Landon Roberts. I think that's going to be the first one because that's going to set the stage. And then it's going to be Tanner Muse, Mark Robinson against Jalen Warren. I mean, that's what we're going to want to see, right, as guys start to do it. I think Kwon Alexander is going to acquit himself. He's going to mix somewhere in there. But as far as guys who are already here, and I'm sure something that he's starred and penciled on is going to be those. And then also, let's face it, Connor Hayward's going to go get in the scrum a little bit because he's that H-back, utility, fullback, tight end type. So I'm sure he's going to get in on backs and backers, and I'm sure they're going to probably put some type of edge guy on him to see how he handles himself off the edge.
In terms of Patrick Peterson, who you see there, what have you seen from him, not just on the field, but as a team guy, a leader?
I mean, everything. I mean, listen, Pat is one of the guys. I've known Pat for a very long time, since he was at LSU. His cousin is Brian McFadden. And Pat, I've watched him in his career in Arizona. Our kids went to the same school. So I love Pat. And Pat is a guy that, as you see him right here, just taking everything in, but also he's a very vocal guy on the sidelines. Like when he's not in the game, he's talking to hey, man, hey, what were you doing there on that robber play? Okay, make sure that you're over here doing this. He's showing guys their drops, talking to Joey Porter Jr., getting in his ear because he was an elite man press type of corner, and that's what they're going to expect Joey Porter and Corey Trice Jr. to do is be those same type of guys. So he's in their ear. He's got his arm around his shoulder. He's talking to those guys. And then also he's learning, right? He's communicating because we've seen him at safety. We've seen him at slot. We've seen him at outside corner. He brings that versatility and that repertoire where he's seen everybody. I mean, there's not an elite player in this league that he has not played against. You know, you can talk about the DeAndre Hopkins. You can talk about the Julio Jones of the world, and he's seen all of those, even the Randy Mosses, right? He's seen all the elite ones. Antonio Brown on this team. He has seen everybody at their best. He's battled all pros, Pro Bowlers, stars, and he's gone head-to-head with all of them. So his knowledge bank is a lot deeper than a lot of people. So when you're talking about the closest extension to a coach on the field, it's that guy. It's number 20.
I love yesterday, Coach Tomlin was on NFL Network with Judy Batista, asked about Patrick Peterson, said, you know, it was just like when the Steelers brought Joe Hayden in terms of being that veteran guy who has played so well throughout his career to help the younger guys. But I think, too, Max, the thing about Patrick that I like is he's coming in, he's being as helpful as possible, he's bringing his A game, but he also has said multiple times, look, this is Cam's team, this is TJ Watt's team. I'm not here to take over that role. I'm just here to supplement and be whatever they need me to be.
Yeah, exactly. You're here to be the putty, right?
I love that.
Wherever you need to stick me, I'm going to mold it. I'm going to hold it together. That's what he is. He comes in as putty for this team. And like you said, the leaders are already established. It wasn't a team that's like really young and that needs guidance like Jacksonville, right? Where it's like, oh, my God, we got to go find the adult in the room. They already have the adults in the room, and he's just another adult coming in and supplementing, like you said, what they've done because he's been a captain. He's been a leader on various teams, and now he's just being the savvy vet who can be the player-coach type to support what the coaches are talking about in the meeting rooms to what the players are trying to achieve on the field and provide that leadership when needed. Not to be, I have to be counted, but I'll be there when you need me to.
And especially on defense, not the younger side of the team, you could say. Of course, you have 2 draft picks from this class who will hopefully be integral parts of the Steelers' defense. But on offense, we just saw Najee Harris a minute ago, a team captain last year, a young guy. And, of course, you still have a quarterback on his rookie contract and all the different pieces. But that's why they went out in free agency and found a guy like Allen Robinson. So what have you seen from A-Rob so far?
So A-Rob just been a consummate vet. I mean, what you expect. I mean, you know, the slot position on this team is one of those where you want to have a lot of different versatility. And when you have a Calvin Austin Jr., Calvin Austin III, I'm sorry, who can actually run as fast as he does, that's one way. But now it's like, hey, if he's not there or he's getting a little bit inconsistent with his play, this is the sure-handed, steady Eddie, great hands, and that's what Allen Robinson has shown us in camp so far. He's had a great catch radius. He's caught everything that's been asked of him, and being a consummate vet, and he's also the roommate of George Pickens. So he's there to mentor as well the younger guys on this team. And also, you know, let's face it, keep Deontay, motivated and in line. And you have, like you said, Calvin Austin, Cody White. You have a lot of young guys on this team, inexperienced guys, so he's to provide the experience in here. You don't get to 10-plus years in the NFL without doing something right, and Allen Robinson's been that guy.
And there is no doubt in my mind that putting George Pickens with him in the same room was not a coincidence.
Oh, come on. I mean, listen, there is zero coincidence when Coach Tomlin's involved. It is expertly crafted and looked at from a very analytical sense, just like Broderick Jones and Isaac Suamalu are rooming together. You know, you want that experience so you can teach these young guys how to be veterans, how to be consummate pros on a day-to-day, and your actions, what you put into your body, when you get to bed, how you wake up, how you stretch, how you take notes, how you review those notes. All of those things matter. And having a veteran in the room that knows all those things and goes about it in a certain way starts to kind of leak into the guy, even if by osmosis, so to speak. If he's not asking those questions directly, seeing those actions repeated on a daily basis in the same space will eventually rub off on the younger guy.
And Isaac Seumalo might be one of the best free agent signings. You could argue a number of different ways, but just what he brings in terms of stability. Travis Kelce said, the best guy he's played with in terms of the offensive line. How does that mesh with, as you said, the interior guys who were here last year in terms of becoming a unit and also who is the leader?
Well, I think that's one of the things we're still waiting to flush out is who is the unequivocal leader of this squad, because none of the guys are vocal. And Isaac Seumalo is another guy who, he's very quiet. He's not the rah-rah, I'm going to cuss you out, but he's going to hold guys accountable. And when he does speak, it matters. His voice matters in a room, but it's going to be something that's fleshed out over time. Chemistry is always developed. When you're adding new pieces into an offensive line, unless they were here the year before, it's not exactly plug and play. And so for Seumalo, for Nate Herbig, for Broderick Jones and company, like all of those things are going to have to be earned. And you gather that through time, because one of the things I've noticed every day I go into the lunchroom, either breakfast, lunch, or dinner, offensive line sitting together. That's important. Guys aren't sitting disjointed or segmented or in other tables. They're all together. They're all huddled up together, talking, communicating, becoming that tight-knit group, because you're going to need eventually 5 fingers to come together as a fist. And that's what you're working at now. Where they're at in the fist-making process is a different story, but they're getting there and they're doing all of those necessary things. And I think for the interior, it's most important. As a center, you've got to depend on those guards, especially when you get into those loud away team stadiums and the center's head is between his legs looking back for the quarterback to kick, or if they go back to what they've been doing where he stays up and the guard looks back, there's a trust level between center and guard. Like, the guard's not looking at everything, so he doesn't know, and the center has to be able to relay that to him, or vice versa. If his head's between his legs, you have to be able, as a guard, to communicate what the center would see. So they're getting a lot of that done right now in this process. And like I said, once pads, it adds a different level to it, because you're going to be forced into situations where trust is going to come into this, and it's going to have to be earned or broken very quickly once we get pads on.
Hopefully earned. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, Brandon Fiocco, I know you mentioned him briefly earlier, another free agent signing. What have you seen from him?
I mean, big. He's a large human. Very big. He's a large guy. He's a big dude. And, I mean, at the nose tackle position, it's tough to really grade those guys when pads aren't on. But, I mean, he's in. He's healthy. I mean, and he's whipping guys around. He's throwing them around right now. So I think that adds a lot of stability, because Keanu Benton's another guy, a rookie, right? Mm-hmm. We drafted, coming from Wisconsin as well. Funny enough how we have defensive guys from Wisconsin all over the
I heard they're
defense.
Pretty good.
You know what? I think
they transition.
I think they might actually – they're not a semi-pro team, but they're looking like one. They're looking like a feeder. But – I think it'll take a jump for him, and he's brought in here to mentor, right? He's kind of a journeyman, and he's here to kind of mentor Keanu Benton, and they're going to both probably rotate in at that starting nose tackle position until they figure out who is the guy to start the season as such. But Carl Dunbar loves having 6, 7, 8 guys he can roll through in a game, so I expect Brandon Fiocco to be a guy that's going to add that extra panache and a little extra punch in the middle of that defensive line to go alongside either Cam and Larry, or it's going to be like Leal and Montravius, or whoever's going to fill in at the other defensive end positions. And even Benton. Benton has that flexibility. He can be over the nose, but he can also play a 3-4 DN. So you look to see him work his way into that minutia of probably in the number 5, 6, 7 spot on this defensive line.
And Benton is someone that Larry Ogunjobi told me during minicamp that he thinks is going to pop, is going to show what he can do during training camp. Somebody that he said, he listens to what we say and different things like that. So if Larry O's giving you that before you put the pads on, that's a pretty good sign.
Yeah, veterans know. They know who they want to play next to and who they don't want to play next to. And Benton, and he looks like an hourglass. I mean, for 300 plus pounds, you're not saying that, I'm saying that a little facetiously, but he does have a shape, big shoulders, smaller waist, bigger hips, the things you want in an interior defensive lineman. He has all of those, and he's pretty quick. He has a great move where he's coming across and kind of giving a club and swim type of move technique that really frustrates centers so far in practice. And I think as long as he continues to show that, and like you said, the power level inches up ever so greatly when you put the pads on, and you get to really show your true skill set. So it's going to be exciting to see what he does on Tuesday.
I know on this very program yesterday, you told Mike Pursuta you thought in terms of 7 shots, things would start to even out, and the defense showed up yesterday. They seemed a little feisty.
Yeah, there's a little level of what we call festivity that happens in practice. And, if you got the day before, you're going to bring a little extra oomph. You're going to pack an extra sandwich in your pocket, because that's like, I'm a little bit hungrier today, so I'm going to need something to suffice that. And they chose 7 shots to be the place where they were going to take a bite out of the offense. And they did that. They brought a lot more pressure. You saw a physicality level where they were whipping guys and throwing guys around, a lot more contested guys going to the ground. So it's a good thing that pads are coming very soon. They get a day off tomorrow, because I don't know if we go another couple days if it's not going to be full out, just full practice like pads and guys showing up on the injury report if we don't get those on there to protect themselves.
Is there a player or maybe a position battle you would really like to see come Tuesday that you're looking forward to seeing, or even, somebody versus somebody? I know we've seen a lot of the George Pickens and Joey Porter Jr. kind of having a little bit of words before the pads went on.
Yeah, they had some words before the pads went on. In fact, day one, Joey kind of got George on a play, and then literally the first play of practice on day 2, George said, "I'm just running through you," and he ran and just shoved Joey Porter Jr. to the ground. And it was kind of like the defenders kind of got around. It was like, you knew that was coming, right? So now what are you going to do to respond, young buck? Because Little Peasy and Big Peasy have a very different way of going about their demeanor.
No.
Yeah, right? Surprise. Ding, ding, ding. So that's one I'm really looking forward to once the pads get on. I'm also looking at Corey Trice Jr., him against Deontay Johnson, a very tall corner at 6'3", taller than Lil Peasy. I look for that matchup to see how he's starting to grow into his position as another corner that can put his hand in the pile. I'm also looking at backs on backers. It's going to see Najee and Jalen and Warren, how they acquit themselves against Holcomb, Roberts, Kwon Alexander and company. That's going to be really interesting to see. But, my highlight is always the offensive line. I want to see Cam versus Suamalo. That's what I want to see. I know they did it in the game.
That's like a cage match.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, this is a cage match. Hell in a Cell, right? WWE style. Who's going to come out on top? I think that's going to be a good battle. Keanu Benton and probably against James Daniels. I want to see that type of matchup. Dan Moore, of course, going against Highsmith. How does he respond in this battle? Broderick Jones will probably get a shot at him and Marcus Golden. How does he do now that the pads are real and the power level's there? The nastiness that I saw at the University of Georgia, does that translate over here? I think tight ends. I want to see Darnell Washington, hell of a blocker in college. I want to see what he does on the edge in some of these drills against the likes of T.J. Watt, against the likes of Alex Highsmith as well, and just see where he's at. Because 6'7", 288 is no small man, and a guy that was prided in his run game and run blocking. How does he do in some of the pass pro drills?
We had fans submit some questions today on Twitter to ask you, Max. So I want to get to a few of them because there were some pretty good ones, some involving food, your roommate, and whatnot. So let's get to those. And thanks to everybody who sent them in. We'll get to as many as possible. So let's take a look at our first one. All right, this is from Carol. Max, what was one of your favorite things to do when you were at St. Vincent, and did you like when the pads came on?
Okay, one of my favorite things to do while I was here was I used to like to walk around campus and go meet with the monks and see them as they're walking around, because there's a monastery way back over there.
Right.
And there was actually a monk, Brother Maximilian. So it didn't get more fortuitous. We couldn't have bonded more instantly than that name right there. And just kind of talking with him and just almost the somber nature that it brings you. You realize in a place that's steeped in history and the holy nature that is around here, being able to just kind of walk and talk with some of the different monks over the time here was one of my favorite things to do around the campus. I loved when pads came on, because all the trash talk, all the stuff the defensive guys would say, they would get a lot quieter once the pads came on, because there was a certain physicality that you brought when the pads were. And in my early days, when you have guys like Casey Hampton, Aaron Smith, Brett Kiesel, Joey Porter, Clark Hagans, James Harrison, Lamar, I mean, the list goes on for those frontline guys. And you get yours, they get theirs, and it's a tug-of-war type of match, but we're all getting better. And Coach Cower, early on in my career, when we had two-a-days every day, we started with goal line practice. And to go out there and really just leave it all out there on the goal line and then get to the day was one of those things where it gave you the measuring stick. And every day you knew, I can go prove myself. I had a bad day yesterday, we'll just take it out on the guy today. And that's what the pads really brought. And there was civility to it because we knew at the end of the day we're teammates. And, the first stringers, we're going to have to help each other out. And defense is going to need me in the season just like I'm going to need them. So it was that physicality was the next step in the process of becoming a team and figuring out who your teammates are going to be. But it was also that chance to really show yourself.
And goal line, something usually Coach Tomlin saves for Friday Night Lights. Before we get to this next tweet, we did want to say the Steelers PR department announced that fullback Monty Pottebaum has decided to retire. He is now on the reserved retired list. So a bit of a roster update.
Yeah, that is a smidge of an update, and I have to say I'm pretty surprised because we hadn't seen a lot of Monty before this, and I don't know if maybe he took a non-padded hit that made him change his mind, but that's also what training camp's for. The attrition is not necessarily a physical one. Sometimes it's a mental one as well. So we wish the best to Monty Pottebaum, and his decisions. But, yeah, update indeed.
Yes, just wanted to throw that out there. So sorry, we're going to get back to your questions for Max. And I think the one that we had up there, oh, yes, favorite place to eat in Latrobe.
Dino's, no question about it. Wings, wings, wings. And I'm a soup connoisseur. As Wolf has learned over the last couple of days, because they have a featured soup every day in training camp, I'm always over there. It's chicken and rice today. I love chicken and rice soup. It's one that kind of gets overlooked by chicken noodle. It's kind of like the stepbrother to chicken noodle. But chicken and rice soup is just such a great soup. So I had that for lunch today along with my salad. And Wolf is just like, dude, you eat a lot of soup. I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's hot outside. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Soup is good year-round. So Dino's, they have my heart for their wings and their soup selection.
All right, it looks like the Steelers players are making their way off of the turf field, heading up to the practice fields. I'm sure we're going to hear some cheers. There you see QB1, Kenny Pickett making his way to where all the fans are sitting there right below us. The Chuck Noll Field sign of the grandstand there as well. We just want to thank everybody for joining us here today on Steelers Training Camp Live presented by FedEx. Max, thanks for joining me. Coming up after practice, I'll be with Craig Wolfley for our wrap-up show, and we hope to have Kwon Alexander joining us live from the field. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day.